Hi, zoology. This is a video of the discussion that we were going to have. So I had the discussion with first hour, I had it with sixth hour and some kids that came to Zoom. And now if you weren't able to make any of those, I am recording my answers to our questions that you guys posed. I was actually really proud of the questions that you guys asked. They had me sitting on my couch at 8 o'clock in the evening, like, well, how does that work? Or really questioning how I teach them stuff. So thank you. I appreciate you guys. Keep those good questions coming. And here is our discussion questions. I'm going to post this PowerPoint to Canvas so you can look at the questions along with this video as well. Okay, share screen. Okay, wait, hold on. Pause. I didn't click the right button. Okay, there we go. Yay. Okay, all of our discussion questions are going to go on the same PowerPoint because I think keeping them in the same location is nice and easy, and then I'll just upload the videos of me talking afterwards. So our first notes were over biology basics, and I kind of went through the Google form and all the questions that you guys asked and separated them into two categories. The first category was class-related information, and then the second category was more of like actual content related. So we'll go over both of those. I thought it was really nice that you guys had some class content that you wanted to talk about. That way we're just clearing out the air and we know what we're gonna do. So one of the questions was about how long will our video for notes be? I try to keep our notes maximum 20 minutes just because it's really rough to watch a video longer than that. And if it is longer, if we do have more content that I need to go over, I'll try to split it into two videos. That way we're not overwhelmed. This question was about accessing the video because it is a YouTube link. Sometimes it is really hard to click on, and then for some reason it doesn't work. I have figured out a workaround for it. Mr. Pentecost told me what I need to do in order to fix that. So from now on, all the videos that we're going to watch shouldn't be blocked anymore. Is that to say it might never be blocked for you? No, it might be blocked, and then we'll just have to figure a workaround for that. But we should be good from here on out. What if I don't have any questions? So if you don't have any questions, you read the notes, watch the notes, and you're like, I get all of this. This is pretty straightforward. I want you to come up with a question that maybe you're wondering about. So if you thought about something and it took you down a second rabbit hole, go ahead and put that question down. I look through them. If I'm able to answer them, I'll answer them. If not, I can address that personally with you through email or whatever. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask some wild out there thing. Or if you're really struggling, come up with something that's like a quiz question or something you think someone might have a question about. Anything will help because it will push along the discussion and make it a little bit better. Will notes be graded? The answer is no, but all of our quizzes are open notes. So if you take the notes and you do well on the notes, it's probably in your best interest. Should we write down everything or just definitions? And I'm also going to leave this up to you. I would say write down the most important information that you think. I'm not going to have you write down everything. I don't think that you should copy me word for word. I think that's actually too difficult. So whatever you think is interesting or important or just, fun facts, write this stuff down. And what will we do if we have a sub? So if you have a sub, usually it will be something that we already know what to do because we get that whole week at once. So it shouldn't be a surprise if I'm out either. Like if I'm going to be out, we'll probably know in advance. That being said, I will be out on the 22nd and the 25th of January. So Put that down in your calendar. Miss Johnson won't be here. If for some reason I'm out and it wasn't known, like I get sick, because sometimes I do get migraines and they make me sleep all day, I'll send out an email or an announcement on Canvas to let you guys know what we need to do. Usually it should be fine, but sometimes we need to push things back a day because we can't obviously do discussions if I'm not here. And there will never be Zooms or Google Meets or anything when I'm out. So don't worry about that. All right, so that was all the class questions that we had. The second part was content related questions, and there were only 5 of these because a lot of them were very similar, so I kind of just smushed them into one. So the first question was, how does asexual reproduction work? So believe it or not, you guys actually already learned a form of asexual reproduction when you were in biology. So when you talked about cells dividing with mitosis, that is a form of asexual reproduction because those 2 cells that divided are identical copies. When we are talking about the organisms that we are going to be looking into, those animals, the way that they do asexual reproduction is a part of that animal will break off and form another organism from that broken off piece. Think like Miss Johnson loses her arm and then her arm grows into another Miss Johnson. Kind of weird when we think about it in terms of people, but still still a thing. Okay, so that was asexual reproduction. It's more common in simple animals. So the simpler the animal, the less complex they are, the easier it is for them to do asexual reproduction. And then this question, which I thought was a very interesting question, and I pondered it for a little bit of time, and we had a whole debate in first hour. Is it possible for an asexually reproduced organism to have a genetic mutation? So the only way, because they're identical copies, what happens, and I mean, the answer is yes, it is possible, because what happens is we're looking at copies, and so if we copied it incorrectly, that could create a mutation. But like I said, when the organisms that we're looking at, the way that they grow is from an already established DNA set. So there's not really anything to copy wrong. It could have a mutation if the organism it came from had the mutation, so that mutation would be passed on. Or if it's exposed to some kind of radiation, it could create a mutation, which then it could pass on. What I do want you to write down, if you write down nothing else, I want you to write down this: genetic mutations are not good and they are not bad. They are just kind of there. Genetic mutations can lead to speciation. They can lead to evolution. They could be good for the organisms by making them more adapted to their environment. They could be bad for the organisms by making them die out, but they are neither good nor bad. So I want you to keep that in mind. All right, so our third question is, why are animals multicellular? So this has to do with the levels of organization within inside our bodies. So when we're thinking about animals, we know that animals, or us in general, if we're using us as the like animal example, we have a digestive system, we have an excretory system, we have a circulatory system. All of these systems are made up of organs, which are made up of tissues, which are made up of cells. So cell is the smallest unit of life. And in order to have more complex organisms and more complex organisms, we have to put together cells that work together to build those different parts. So to build the organs, to build the organ systems. Plants are multicellular, funguses are multicellular, protists sometimes are multicellular, mostly unicellular, and animals are going to be multicellular. Bacteria are always going to be unicellular. because they're just tiny. That's what they do. So complex organisms are going to have more cells because they have more higher functions that they need to do. So this was like a bunch of different questions. It was 3 questions in one that I kind of just put into one big thing. So the difference between internal and external fertilization, and then an explanation of how internal and external fertilization happen. So internal fertilization is when there is insertion of reproductive organs and fertilization happens within the body of one of the organisms. External fertilization is when both sperm and egg are released into the environment. This environment, I said, is usually in water, and I'm going to rephrase myself and say always in water. And this is because if this were to happen on land, the sperm and eggs would dry out and therefore not be viable anymore. They wouldn't be usable, they would die out. So bodies of water will typically see a lot of external fertilization. It's just easier. There is some external fertilization that happens on land, but it's usually involves some kind of moisture component. So there'll always be some kind of moisture component, and we'll talk about those when we get to those organisms that do that. There was a word that I wanted to make sure that you guys wrote down, and I'm going to see if I can write it on here. And I can. Great. And that word is polyspermy. I accidentally said the wrong word in first hour. Sorry. I'll make sure you guys get the correct word later. So polyspermy is when an organism, or when an egg only allows one sperm to come into its egg and fertilize it. Same thing happens with like humans. If we think of, we have one egg in the female that's going to be released, and then there's like a bajillion sperms that are coming at it. Only one can get in. Once that one is in, it releases like this like force field. It is so cool. You can see YouTube videos on it. Fascinating to me. It releases like a force field and pushes all the other sperms back. So it doesn't allow this multiple sperms to enter. And that's why it's strange to think about when you're like, but there's just like all these eggs and all these sperms just everywhere. Like, how do you know which one's which? The eggs and sperm have specific mechanisms in which they will only allow the sperm that belongs to that same species. So like a fish cannot fertilize a turtle's egg. That doesn't work because they're not the same species. So it recognizes which species it belongs to. So only that species can come in, and only allows one of the sperms to enter the egg. Once that egg is fertilized, it then goes wherever it needs to go, usually falls to the ground or floats up in the upper part of the ocean and develops into its new organism. Okay, clear polyspermy. And the last question is, what are some examples of symbiotic relationships, and what if one of the organisms becomes extinct? So there are 4 different types of symbiotic relationships: mutualism, commensalism, parasitism, and predator-prey. With mutualism, this means that both benefit. Like one person gave the example, and I was really excited to see that, of a dog and human. Of course, that's a mutually beneficial relationship. Both organisms get love and feeling like they matter, and it's just wonderful. Like, who doesn't love dogs? They're great. Commensalism is where one benefits and the other doesn't care. Think like, trying to give a good example that I haven't used before. I want you to think like humpback whales and barnacles. The humpback whale is not hurt by those barnacles. They're just kind of there. It doesn't care about them, could do or do without them, doesn't matter. But those barnacles really depend on that humpback whale to take them across the ocean and to get different nutrients in different waters. So that benefits those barnacles, but that humpback whale isn't bothered. Parasitism, like ticks and dogs, I'm really on this kick of ticks and dogs, right? That relationship is when one benefits and one is harmed. So a parasite never wants to kill its host because then it's cut off from its food source. So it just wants to make it a little sick. It just ends up being a little sick and a little harmed. Some of the nutrients goes away from that first organism, from the host organism. There are tons of different parasites that we're going to talk about in this class. There's a whole month long where I think everything we talk about is parasites. It's kind of gross, but like in a cool way. And yeah, love it. It's great. Or learn about ones that you never even thought would be conceived. Predator prey, that one's pretty self-explanatory. One is going to benefit because one gets the food and the other is dead. Rip. This relationship is like lions and antelopes, or sharks and fish. Fish are friends, not food. I like this second question. What if one of the organisms become extinct? So in a mutually beneficial relationship, if one of those organisms become extinct and both of you depend on each other for survival, it's not going to do too well for the other organism that doesn't go extinct. Usually both of them would end up going extinct at the same time. Commensalism really depends on which one of them goes extinct. And same for parasitism. With predator prey, if the predator goes extinct, that prey booms, right? No longer has anything hunting it. If the prey goes extinct, that predator either needs to find a new prey or it's going to die out. So these kinds of mutualistic relationships really lean on each other. And so that's why keeping these relationships intact in the environment is really important. One of the last things that we're going to talk about at the end of the year is endangered species and invasive species, and that the idea of extinction and how that affects the environment is really going to play a role. We're going to talk about keystone species and all of that. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm glad you guys are thinking along those lines. Okay, I'm going to clear my drawings and I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so that is it. That's our first discussion, and I hope you guys added a bit to your notes. We're going to have another discussion on Friday, and so I hope to see you then. Bye, guys.